Hello everyone, I'm Pat Zagalo, Executive Director of Friends of Chamber Music, and I want to thank you for joining me for this wonderful virtual concert by the incredible violinist Rachel Barton Pine. Rachel was first on our series in 2016, and we have been so anxious to bring her back to hear her again. So we're very, very grateful for this virtual concert this year. You're going to hear a wonderful program, and Rachel will introduce each of the pieces she's playing, many which come from her many years of research with her Music by Black Composers project. I think you're going to hear some music and some composer names that you haven't heard before. So I hope by the end of the concert you may be wanting to Google that music and those composer names to find out more, because there are some fantastic gems here. And if you didn't quite catch all the names of those pieces, do remember that there is a link to the full program in the video description on this screen. And it's available on our website at vocm.org. Also remember that this concert is available on demand through April 28th, so you have plenty of time to watch again, and I have a feeling you're going to want to hear this music again and again. I have some very special folks that I want to thank for their generous sponsorship of this performance. They have truly made this possible, and they've made it possible for all of you to be watching for free. So I hope that if you know any of these people or meet them in the future, I hope you'll give them an extra thanks for their generous support. Thank you so much to Don Hayami, Ronnie Lacroute, Jan Lowen, and Richard Harris and Susan Mandeberg. We truly cannot thank you enough. And thank you to all of you watching who've donated to Friends of Chamber Music this year. To say it's been a challenging year for the arts is a bit of an understatement, but your support and enthusiasm has made such a difference. This is our last virtual concert of the season, but watch soon for an announcement about our exciting 21-22 season. And if you haven't already done so, please do sign up for our e-newsletter at our website, vocm.org, and follow us on social media for all the latest news. We love to stay in touch that way, and we love to hear from you anytime. I hope to see you all soon, but for now, let's hear a wonderful program by the one and only Rachel Barton Pine.
Hi, I'm Rachel Barton Pine, and I'm so glad to be sharing my music with everyone at Portland Friends of Chamber Music. I loved performing for you in person a few years ago, and thanks to modern technology, I can perform for you again today over the internet. Today's program is called American Traditions, and I'm going to start with some music from the 18th century that Europeans brought over to our country. I'm going to start with a set of French dances as seen through the eyes of a German composer, Bach's Partita No. 3 in E major. After the brilliant Preludio, there are a set of 5 different dance forms. First, the elegant and stately Loure, then a rustic Gavotte, the courtly Menuets, a cheerful Bourrée, and to finish off, a cute little Gigue. Here is Bach's E major Partita. Some of the favorite music of early American settlers was Scottish fiddling. In fact, that's the music you'll find if you go into a pub in colonial Williamsburg, for example. Benjamin Franklin is known to have said something along the lines of, "All that classical music is very nice, but there's nothing that beats a good Scots tune." So I'm going to play for you a medley of Scottish fiddle tunes, a type of medley that we call an MSR, a March, Strathspey, and Reel. And all of these tunes come from the 18th century. When we think about our uniquely American traditional music, it really has two distinct parents. The music of the British Isles that the white Americans brought over, and the music of Africa brought over by the enslaved African Americans. And eventually those two kinds of music combined to become something that had never before been heard in the world. I'm going to play the third and fourth movements of a 5-movement suite by Noel da Costa. Da Costa is alternately referred to as an African, an African American, or an Afro-Caribbean composer because he was born in Nigeria to parents of Jamaican descent and made his career here in the US. So I guess everybody wants to claim him. He wrote a wonderful suite for unaccompanied violin based on American fiddle styles, inspired, of course, by African American traditions of fiddling. And so you'll hear some bluesy types of sounds and some fiddly types of sounds and just lots of flavorful stuff in these two movements by Noel da Costa. Here's another take on the idea of fiddling meets classical violin. Mark O'Connor is one of the world's greatest fiddlers, but has also collaborated with guys like Yo-Yo Ma on chamber music, has written concertos for violin and orchestra, and all kinds of different stuff. This was his first foray into the genre of the Caprice, kind of thinking, what would Paganini do if he had grown up with Appalachian fiddling? And so here is Mark O'Connor's Caprice No. 1. The Afro-English composer Samuel Coleridge-Taylor lived at the turn of the last century during the Victorian era. He was renowned as a violinist, conductor, and composer, and during his life was often referred to as the Black Dvorak or the African Mahler, which of course in those days were high compliments. He wrote lots of chamber music, symphonic music, all kinds of different stuff, and actually his oratorio, Hiawatha, based on the Longfellow poem, for many decades was the most frequently performed oratorio in the world, beating out even the Handel Messiah, if you can believe that. Well, he was a very inspiring figure to many African American classical musicians who didn't have the opportunities that people had on the other side of the ocean. And so a lot of times African American classical musicians had to form their own separate organizations, and they often called them Samuel Coleridge-Taylor societies after their hero. Coleridge-Taylor ultimately did make it over to the U.S. at the invitation of W.E.B. Du Bois, and he also published a collection of his concert versions of African American spirituals, saying that he hoped to do for the spiritual what Dvorak had done for Czech music and Brahms for the Hungarian dances. And Booker T. Washington actually wrote the foreword to that collection. I'm going to play one piece from his spirituals. It's the beloved melody, Deep River, and you'll hear the famous spiritual at the beginning and end of the piece, but then in the middle is original music by Coleridge-Taylor, perhaps portraying the kind of circumstance that would have caused the creation of this spiritual. Really amazing piece. And then after that, I'm going to play a piece called Louisiana Blues Strut by a composer named Coleridge-Taylor Perkinson. Yes, not a coincidence. Mr. and Mrs. Perkinson must have been fans of Samuel Coleridge-Taylor and decided to name their son Coleridge-Taylor as his first name. Well, that's quite a mouthful of a first name, so Perkinson, the composer, always went by Perk. Yeah, little did his parents know that he'd grow up to become a composer himself. He actually ended his life in my hometown of Chicago as director of the New Black Music Repertory Ensemble, and I was very lucky to get to know him and work on his music with him. So first, Deep River by Samuel Coleridge-Taylor, and then Louisiana Blues Strut by Coleridge-Taylor Perkinson. Music continues to evolve before our very eyes in classical and beyond. And of course, one of today's modern styles is hip hop. And one of the premier composers who is actually incorporating elements of hip hop into his classical music is Daniel Bernard Roumain. And this is the first movement of a 6-movement suite written for me by DBR. It's called 6 Hip Hop Dances and Prayers, and this is Hip Hop Dance number 1. The great Belgian violinist and composer Henri Vieuxtemps is one of my musical ancestors. He was the teacher of the teacher of the teacher of the teacher of my teacher, making him my great-great-grand teacher. And when he made his first American tour in the 1840s, he went around playing his normal classical stuff, and people were like, well, that's nice. They weren't that into it. They weren't that used to classical music yet. So he decided to win them over and show them how cool the violin actually was by playing a tune that they already knew and loved. So he made this version of a popular American song that we still know today and called it Souvenir d'Amérique. And after that, people were like, all right, this guy is awesome. So as the story goes, he made his second American tour a number of years later, and in the meantime, many a great artist had come and gone, and the American public was becoming much more used to classical music. But as the story goes, Vieuxtemps took no chances, and this piece remained on each of his concerts. Here is Souvenir d'Amérique by Vieuxtemps, one of our American tunes as seen through the eyes of a European. Well, I hope you've been enjoying this journey through the violin's relationship with some of our American musical traditions. And I thought, what better way to finish off than with something quintessentially American, America's favorite pastime. Just a couple of years ago, I was invited to give a recital for a summer music festival in Cooperstown, New York. And I thought, well, finally, this is my excuse to do something that I'd been meaning to do for many, many years. In his youth, my husband was a minor league pitcher, and I always thought it would be fun to make a violin version of Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Well, when I finally started doing it, I realized instead of like a normal set of virtuoso variations one after the next, that it might be even more fun to intersperse some of those little snatches of music that you always hear from the ballpark organ during the game. So here is a piece that I call A Day at the Ballpark. I hope you enjoy it.
So Rachel, I am so happy to see you again, even if it's only on screen. We so loved having you on our series in 2016, and we've been so anxious to have you back to perform for us. So, of course, we are disappointed not to see you in person, but so grateful to you for providing this virtual concert to us. So thank you very, very much. You know,
So glad it all worked out.
Oh, me too. This pandemic has hit musicians so hard, as you know, and I feel like so many of them just, stopped working and performing. But I feel like you have not missed a beat. You have got to be the most active, busiest musician this last year online. I mean, for starters, the 24 and 24, I know the Bach project you're doing online, the Fridays with Rachel Barton Pine. Tell us about all these things you've been doing. I mean, my gosh, you must be so busy.
Yeah, well, I always like to look at the positive side of life. And it's been, while I totally miss being able to have the inspiration of, other live human beings in the room, which really does affect kind of the electricity and expression of your playing. And of course, getting a little bit of applause at the end. But
yes, that helps.
There have been a number of wonderful things about streaming concerts. For example, people who are too elderly or infirm to have gone out to a concert, people who are too young and wiggly to yet sit through a concert, people in other parts of the country or the world who might not be in the town where I happen to be performing that season. And so it's just been lovely to have absolutely everybody be able to tune in. And quite frankly, I hope that when we can do everything we want in person again, that we won't, roll back the clock, but we'll have a new normal where we embrace the best of both worlds, doing all the in-person concerts we want to, and then streaming some of them, or doing extra streaming meet and greets afterwards, or doing continuing to do special streaming events, just so that we can connect to all of the music lovers everywhere. It's just been great to be able to share my music in new and exciting ways.
That's great. Do you plan to continue a lot of online things once you're back to live performances?
Well, I certainly hope so. And not just performances, but it's been particularly rewarding to be able to interact with young people around the country, to do master classes, presentations, workshops. For example, I did one in Mississippi at a university where I would not have been soloing this season, even had this season's concerts occurred, but they brought me in on a screen and I spent a wonderful couple hours with the young people there. And that's the kind of opportunities for kids that I hope these institutions, now that they've got their technology up and running, will continue to mix it up and include these kinds of things.
That's great. So I want to ask you also about your Rachel Barton Pine Foundation, which, excuse me, I believe you started in 2001 with around there, I think with a mission to, advance and appreciate classical music. And I know there's so many wonderful aspects of it. I'd love for you to talk more about all the different ways you are helping classical music through the foundation.
Yeah, so of course you always want to make your mission statement a bit broad when you're filing your 501c3 paperwork. And I wanted to give myself the flexibility that if I had any ideas down the road, it would still fit within the mission. But I always had a couple of primary purposes, which we are still engaged in. One is young artist support. I came from a very financially struggling family, and sometimes just being able to pay for the sheet music for the next piece I'd been assigned, for concert clothes, piano accompanists, even putting gas in the car to drive to my lessons off in the suburbs, and then also buy groceries that week was a huge struggle. And so I started a financial assistance program for young artists, which goes beyond traditional scholarships, which cover the cost of your lessons, but usually nothing else. And then I also have an instrument loan program. And we also started just about 20 years ago our Music by Black Composers project for the purpose of making music by composers from Africa and the African diaspora from throughout the centuries, from around the world, available to young artists from the beginning levels all the way through the advanced levels. And it's just been incredibly exciting and oh gosh, it just fills me with so much optimism to see the world catching up and beginning to embrace this idea of having a broader representation of humanity on stage, because not only is that the right thing to do, of course, but it also is such good music. We're all really missing out if we don't get to experience these incredible pieces. And MBC, which has its own separate website, musicbyblackcomposers.org, we've now vastly expanded our activities beyond our original pedagogical publications and other resources. And now we have resources for professional performers and for music appreciators and just all kinds of different stuff on our website. And so I have definitely not been bored. I have not been pandemic baking or Netflix binging. I have plenty of work to do and plenty more out into the future. And it's just so, I'm so grateful that we started this work long enough ago, that now that people are catching up and really seeing the value of it and wanting it, that we already have a lot of things that we're able to offer them that we've already collected and created.
That's wonderful. And don't I understand that does the website you have a whole database of like all these works that you've uncovered? Is that right?
Well, we have different repertoire directories, and we're waiting for either more donation dollars or a volunteer qualified programmer to build a full-fledged database with the real drop-down lists and so on. But right now we have sortable tables, which gets you, a large part of the way there, and is very, very user-friendly. And we have lists of repertoire that go beyond any other existing internet resource, and many more soon to be launched. And we actually, if you go to the About section, you can see a projects timeline, and it says everything we've accomplished thus far and everything we plan to do in the next few stages of our work. Lots and lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful resource, such a wonderful addition to the classical music world. Yeah.
Well, and of course, you just heard some of those pieces today.
Right, exactly.
And, that's how I came to do this project. It was so random, but I just fell in love with some of these composers and some of this music and realized it wasn't being easily disseminated because so much of it is either out of print or was never published because of historic discrimination. And so you just can't go and just lay your hands on it without a huge amount of research. And sometimes that research means going to, unsorted boxes of files in the composer's grandniece's attic. It's not even about going to a library in London or something, though we've done that too. So I thought, we've got to make this more available to people. And you can see why, because it's so great to listen to.
I know. You must find yourself scouring through things if you have time at any city that you visit, wondering if there's something there to uncover for your project here.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you, I saw an interview where you were asked who your favorite musician of all times was, and you said without hesitation, Maud Powell. And I was fascinated by that, and I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit more about Maud Powell and why she is your favorite musician.
Yeah, well, you just heard her version of Samuel Coleridge-Taylor's Deep River. And so Maud Powell is my all-time hero, not just because of her amazing artistry, which sadly happily we have some record of it orally from the old little wax cylinders that she made at the turn of the century. She didn't live into the electric era, and so we don't have concertos and things like we do for the guys from the next generation like Chrysler and Heifetz. But it's not just her great artistry that I admire, but also the values by which she lived her life. First of all, she's a compatriot because she was born in my home state of Illinois, but she lived from 1867 to 1920. She was America's first internationally acclaimed violinist, and during her lifetime was considered to be the greatest violinist in America of either gender, as well as the greatest woman violinist in the world. And she just broke a lot of barriers. She actively championed the works of women composers, the works of American composers at a time when American artists were mostly playing European music. She also championed just cutting-edge modern music. She gave the American premiere of the Tchaikovsky Concerto and the Sibelius Concerto when that stuff was considered to be, too out there for listeners. She insisted that they were great pieces and she was going to play them anyway. She was the first woman to sit first violin in a string quartet where men filled the other chairs, not only integrating the genders, but leading the group. She was one of the first artists to engage in what we now call outreach or community engagement. Instead of resting on her days off between big concerts in big cities, she would find some small town halfway in between and give that town's first ever classical concert and explain to the audience how to listen to the violin's music. And she was the first white artist to actively champion the works of Black composers. So I feel like with all of the work that I do in my life, I'm just trying my best to carry on her legacy and follow in her footsteps. Oh, she also embraced new technologies. The phonograph had just been invented, and she was the Victor Talking Machine Company's first instrumental recording star. And many people would buy a phonograph just to listen to Maud Powell records. And I was lucky enough to get to be one of the people to accept the Lifetime Achievement Awards from the Grammys on her behalf a few years back. She became only the 5th violinist to ever receive the Lifetime Achievement Award and the first woman instrumentalist of any genre. So 100 years after her death, she was still breaking new ground. And the Beatles got their Lifetime Achievement Award in the same ceremony, so they were in good company.
Very good. Wow, what a role model. I mean, she's amazing. So I want to ask you about another mentor, I guess, a role model for you. I know you studied with Roland Vieuxtemps, and a lot of our audience probably does not realize, I mean, this very renowned violin instructor is also the father of Brendan Vieuxtemps of the Pacifico Quartet, who is one of our very favorite and very regular appearances on our series. So I know that Roland Vieuxtemps has had many students, including other members of the Pacifico Quartet, including you, and many others who've gone on to very prestigious careers. So just wondering, what's the biggest thing that jumps out at you, why he has had such an impact on students and been so successful?
Well, they're actually a husband and wife team,
True.
Roland and
Yes.
Almeida Vieuxtemps, and I was lucky to have one lesson with each of them every week.
Oh, you study with both.
And a very unusual teaching partnership because neither was, the assistant to the other. Mr. Vieuxtemps would generally do more of the etude and technique work, but that was really more out of chivalry because, that's the annoying stuff and he wanted to spare his wife. There were some differences between them. Mrs. Vieuxtemps was so great at bringing out a young artist's instincts. And the showmanship, the stage presence. Mr. Vieuxtemps would be more likely to go to the score and talk about the structure of the piece. He was a conductor, so he would explain to you how everything fit together. But he also was just so, just exuding musicality. And to this day, when I want to think, how should a phrase go? I would think, how would Mr. Vieuxtemps sing it? And then I have my answer. And they were just also both so warm and supportive. There's a number of different kinds of vibes that teachers can have with their students, from the kind of cool professional demeanor to the almost dictatorial tough demeanor, which I think I would have wilted under. I think I gained my strength from the security of knowing that my teachers were on my side. But they also modeled just such an ideal family dynamic, not only within their immediate biological family, but also just the family atmosphere that they created with their studio. Their marriage was, really a model for, what one might aspire to in terms of their partnership in every way. And then the way that their students were always just coming and going from their house, if they had troubles of any kind, they would just stay in the guest room for extended periods or come over, and hang out for some extra days to prepare for a competition. And it's just this amazing environment that they created with their musical family. And I was still am so lucky to be a part of it. And of course, to know all the other great artists like Brandon and his wife, Samine, the first violinist of the Pacifica, and so many other colleagues.
Yeah. Wonderful. So I want to switch gears to ask you, you have made so many recordings at this point. What's the one that maybe you're most proud of, or that just really, what's top of your list? That's got to be hard because there's been a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really happy that I got, my Bach sonatas and partitas down on album. And the one that's been the most useful to me to this day is my violin lullabies.
Yeah.
And, that was my first #1 hit. It's so funny the way it happened because I wanted I knew that there was a genre of the concert lullaby, just like there are romances for instruments, right? And they're not meant to be utilitarian romances that you would literally stand under your beloved's window and serenade her with, right? They're meant for the concert stage, but they're called romance. And in the same way, there are lots of vegan leads and verseuses and all of these lovely little pieces that are concert music called lullabies. And after my daughter was born, I was like, oh, I'd like to, because I'm not a great singer. And I was like, I want her to listen to some of these works from the violin repertoire. And I realized most of them hadn't been recorded. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just play a few for her, because I quickly realized with only two hands, I couldn't simultaneously serenade her and nurse her. And so then I realized, okay, if I'm going to record these anyway, maybe I'll just release it as a commercial album. And then it was my first Billboard #1 hit. And I was like, oh, I guess a lot of other parents are looking for violin lullabies and, good things for naps. And, it's so funny because as an advocate for classical music, I've for all these years, I've talked to people about classical isn't just pretty sleepy stuff. It's so exciting, and you should come to the symphony concert and stuff. And now here I made an entire album which is designed to put people to sleep.
True.
But thank goodness it works. And my daughter she's 9, and she still falls asleep to it. And I'm like, good thing I made that album.
That's wonderful. And that's a great segue, because I wanted to ask you about your daughter, who I had the pleasure of meeting when you were here in 2016. And I know she had, even at that time, but she has gone on to be quite the violinist and composer, I understand. And I believe she got her first violin when she was only 10 months old. So as a mother myself, I am giving you full carte blanche here to brag about her as much as you'd like.
Oh, well, that's very sweet. Thanks for asking. Well, I want to make it clear, she didn't play that little violin when she was 10 months old, but my husband wanted to make sure that, because of course, your little tiny child is not allowed to touch your fancy antique
Right.
instrument. He wanted to make sure that she knew that the violin was for her, and so she could touch it and meet it. And she started lessons when she was 2.5, which is pretty normal these days.
Still young.
But yeah, she's been doing great. Of course, the one thing she mostly misses about lockdown is the ability to play chamber music with other children. We're both very lucky that each of us has another live human in the same living space that we can play duets with, and that's been such a blessing.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as being in a string quartet with other kids. And so she's looking forward to that happening again. But we've definitely been appreciating the unusual opportunity, now that everything is online, to be able to take classes from different parts of the country. So she's been involved in the Tucson Symphony's Young Composers Project, which is unique in the country because professional members of the orchestra will play works that the kids are writing in their sessions. So she had her brass quintet played by principals of the orchestra and things like that. She's been doing early music classes from Seattle Historical Arts for Kids, taking medieval rebec and Shakespeare monologues and mensural notation and I don't even know what all. And then she's been doing improv classes from New York and a jazz class. And so it's been, and I'm hoping some of these things might still be virtual for out-of-towners, even when those locally go back to meeting in person. So she's really been thriving. She's been doing a lot of competitions and those things. And but the thing I'm most proud of her for is really her creativity, and so grateful to her teachers for nurturing that in her from the very start. And so she has an Instagram now where she posts little improvisations all the time, and she'll just like somebody said, can you make an improv about a platypus? And she was like, okay, sure. And she did. And I can't even do this.
Wow.
So it's really fun to see. And it's also cool because, I thought, okay, looking at the example of the Vamoses and their son Brandon, I thought, well, maybe I should have my kid play cello because it's similar yet different. And then my husband was like, we're not getting on an airplane every week with a cello in tow.
That's true.
So a little violin it was. And then, of course, the fear is she going to be a carbon copy of me, and how's that going to work? And the answer is she's such a different artist. First of all, she's learning about Baroque violin playing in early music far sooner than me. She's learning about, American and Scottish fiddling much, much earlier than me and all of this stuff. But she also self-identifies as a composer, and she's just following a totally different path than I did. And it's a fun challenge for me because I remember my parents not knowing anything about music and being like, wait, our kid wants to be a violinist. What do we do with that? And I thought, okay, I know how to do a little violinist. Like, this is going to be a walk in the park. And then my kid's like, oh, actually, I'm a composer. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea how to do this. Suddenly I can be much more appreciative of what my parents went through. So,
well, it must be so exciting to just see her develop and blossom and see that, whatever direction she may go in here. That's very exciting.
Yeah, and you never know what's going to happen with your kid, and I have no ambitions or agenda, and what I really want is I want for her to do something that's fulfilling to her, do something that does good in the world, be happy, and as far as music goes, to have music in her life, whether that means she ends up doing something else as a profession and doing music as an enthusiastic participant and attending concerts and going to jams and playing chamber music with friends, or whether she ends up being a performer or who knows what, whatever it is, I definitely want to raise her with an understanding of music and a love of music and an ability to participate in music, and that's something I think every child should be given.
Yeah, well, definitely sounds like she is well on her way with that. Well, Rachel, I want to thank you again for this amazing virtual concert that you gave us and for taking the time to talk with us. You are just doing so many incredible things out there in the classical music world, and we are all very grateful for all you do. We hope to see you in person next season. That will be very exciting to see you. And will daughter Sylvia be with you? Does she still travel with you when you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Great. Actually, we were like one of the super lucky parents because we'd already been homeschooling, though it was hardly homeschooling. It was mostly airplane schooling, backstage schooling, hotel schooling, and so on. But we didn't have to change anything academically. And actually, It's been a luxury for her. She misses the adventures, going to the Costa Rica rainforest one week and the Tower of London the next week. But she's been, enjoying the unique opportunity, the first time in her life where she's had access to all of her toys and all of her books and all of her art supplies every single day. Yeah. So it's been nice. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my website, rachelbartonpine.com, the tour dates page has been repurposed as a virtual appearances page.
Oh, great.
So everything I'm doing is listed. Some of it obviously is not public, but it still shows you what I'm up to. But anything that is public, whether free or ticketed, all the links are there. And the past tour dates section, a lot of those are links that still exist. So if you're looking for something to binge watch, you can hear a whole bunch of violin music.
Great.
So that's been really cool.
Yeah.
And of course, Sylvia is sylviapine.com, and all of her videos are on there and stuff like that.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, and keep doing this wonderful work and your beautiful music, and we hope to see you very soon.
Well, same here. And I guess I'll have to break out a bottle of Willamette Pinot Noir since I'm not there in person to celebrate for the post-concert reception here.
Good idea. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Rachel.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.